morning, gardening friends. I'm Lark and I'm in Wisconsin, Zone 5. I'd like to take you for a walk through my flower garden this morning. It's about 68 degrees right now. Really pretty out. Dame's Rocket, the lavender flower, is aggressive. Some call it invasive. I deadhead it so it does not go too crazy in my garden. Very fragrant. When I deadhead it, it will bloom later. Probably around August or so. Daisies are starting to bloom too. Chives are looking really pretty, but I make sure that I deadhead those for sure, or I'll have chives all over the place. Corabelles. I have to lay mulch. I use grass clippings in the flower garden for mulch. I like silver foliage in the garden. It brightens up the shady areas, or after dusk it brightens up the area. That happens to get snow in the summer, it's called. White flowers. Red barberry. Lupines. I like burgundy foliage in the garden too, so the barberry, pygmy barberry, adds that burgundy. That's a Ligularia orthella. Does well in the shady areas. This gets part shade, part sun around here. Some in substance hosta, and I think that's regal back there, the blue. Not sure. That is a 9-bark Diablo burgundy foliage. The oriental poppies are starting to pop. As are the Siberian iris, the white. The blue is spiderwort. And yep, it does go crazy sometimes. I just yank it out. That really screams orange in the garden, doesn't it? With all the whites. This is a geranium, a perennial geranium. And a pretty ground cover sedum. Gets more burgundy as the summer goes on. I have a lot of reseeds. This is Verbena Buenos Aires, an annual, and I'll be transplanting it. You see how it's coming up on the grass edge. Probably when I yanked it out in fall, seed fell. But I'll transplant some of it. Linum, or blue flax. This is prairie smoke, and the flower is gone, but this is exactly why the common name is called prairie smoke, is the seed head on it is so pretty, very hairy looking, and they call that the smoke. I really plant close, so I get a lot of color for a long time. Since I view the garden from the house all the time, it's our view out the back south windows, I wanted to make sure something was blooming all the time and that I had a lot of textures, different heights. This is a pretty texture ground cover, lady's mantle. Oh, the bees are out. Very underused ground cover. Very pretty though. Lady's mantle. Variegated Solomon seal with bleeding heart poking through. A pretty shade growing plant is called Sweet Cicely. Looks fern-like. Those are the seed heads. It had a white flower and they'll get black seed heads. But very drought tolerant, so the fern-like foliage looks good for a long time. We're down under the pine tree now. It had to be limbed up because it's looking yucky. Simicifuga, hillside black beauty. Pretty foliage. Gets a white spiky flower on, about 5 foot tall, the spiky flower. Foliage stays lower and very fragrant. So on next to this path I'm walking, it's nice to have. Now I talked about the chop and drop method I did last fall and I continue to do. And that's some of the yucky part of chop and drop, where I don't have a lot of perennials thick in here. You can see what I chopped and dropped. But it will fill in. The chop and drop keeps me from having to haul off the spent foliage, and then dropping it on the ground helps feed the soil. The wild geraniums, pink, are ending up, and I will be deadheading all that. These alliums are ready to bloom soon. Logelia, wine and roses. Now this plant is called baneberry or doll's eyes, and I believe it's native to Wisconsin. And right where the flowers were, which was a very lacy white flower, really small and insignificant, these will turn to fire engine red berries, and that's why I use them in the garden, in the shade, because they really add a lot of dots of color in the shade. That's baneberry doll's eyes, red doll's eyes. It comes white and it comes red. And I'm trying to fill this area in with variegated Solomon seal. Brightens up the shaded area. You can still see my daffodil foliage. But it keeps the deer out for a while. I did spray pepper spray yesterday in the garden because there were a couple yearlings that were being inquisitive in the garden. They didn't eat anything, but they came up here. Were looking at me in the south windows, and I shooed them off. Shooed. Like S-H-O-O-D, not like a gun shoot. I wouldn't do that. Lily of the Valley, it was so fragrant down here. Really pretty. These are blue angels. They take up a lot of area. I lost a Japanese maple in there, the lacy one. One too many severe summers and winters, drought and severe cold. Did it in my ostrich fern area, which goes down into the bog. This is the native Solomon seal in here. They'll get a blue berry underneath here. The deer usually eat these, but I spray with pepper spray too. And then they don't like the flavor of it. It's not that it burns them, they just don't like the flavor. My shrub rose is starting to bloom too, and I'm going to be making a oil infusion out of the petals. And I read where to dry it first is better, because if there's too much moisture in the petals, putting them in fresh, then they're more apt to mold. So I will be picking roses today, and I should do it right after this, because they also say to pick in early morning. Your herbs, dew is off, but the oils are still higher than in the afternoon. Baptisia, or I think it's indigo. Pretty pea-like flower. Had trouble with bugs this year early on. It was eating this very aggressive little ranunculus, but I like it, and it ate the foliage, so they didn't bloom too much. I'm hoping, of course, it shouldn't have killed the root. Valerian, another great herb. I use a lot of ground cover on the edges. That one's a sedum, the gold one. I think it's called gold dust. More prairie smoke. Hawkweed, it'll be opening up as soon as the sun hits this area a little more. A real intense orange, but again, very aggressive. Gets like a dandelion seed head on it, you know, that real puffy, and it blows in the wind, so it can be aggressive. My chop and drop method was to eliminate more work for me, and leaving the garden get so thick that the weeds should be less. Poppy just ready to open. Lots of seed heads off of that Jacob's ladder. A nice ground cover, lamb's ear, it's called big ears. Usually doesn't bloom. If it blooms, it's very little, and here's ones that are going to bloom, and I will deadhead it. Salvia, aggressive ornamental oregano for later color. Snow in the summer and chives. Another sedum that I don't have a whole lot of yet. It gets a red-orange as the summer goes on. Real drought tolerant. Catmint. Another nice sedum that gets a yellow flower on. Very aggressive, but that's why they call them ground covers. They cover the ground quickly, so you have to not be afraid of pulling out and tossing or sharing. And this is what I do then. I just take off this stuff so it looks prettier. But you all know we don't have a lot of time in early spring because we have a lot of planting to do if we do veggie gardening also, which I do, veggie gardening and flower gardening. Flower gardening really attracts a lot of the beneficial insects. My stone paths always take time to weed in between. If you get it early, it's not too bad, early in the season. Climbing hydrangea is going up and over this arch. And then I also have a sweet autumn clematis that goes up and over the climbing hydrangea and hopefully over this arch. That's where it was last year. And then we have the trumpet vine. Trumpet vine, can you see that stem? It's old. Not that old. I'd probably say it's about 8 years old. Then I have another clematis for spring color. Jackmania. So it gives me that dark purple blue. And then the trumpet vine, the orange. And then the climbing hydrangea for spring, white, and then white for autumn with this sweet autumn clematis. So spring, summer, and fall color. I am not a plant collector. Most of my plants are very common. I just want them to bloom easily and with as least amount of work as possible and still give me color. I think that Corabelle's is called plum pudding. Nice dark foliage. Another herb that comes up here and there and everywhere is perilla. Nice tasting. I think they use it in sushi, wrap sushi sometimes. New planting of some in substance under here, under this pine. Oops, I don't want my, oh well, my shadow's in it. Sun's directly behind me. Now, this is a junky area, and I see my neighbors here, and I don't want to see their backyard, so I have Annabelle hydrangeas growing for a screen, and then the some in substance will get huge. Nice. Another herb I have is feverfew, and it's just getting ready. It'll have a white flower on it, daisy-like. Feverfew. And a type of allium called Harry. It's really not very pretty. I wouldn't buy it again. It's not real showy. When it's backlit, it's probably the prettiest. Almost reminds me of that prairie smoke flower with its little tendrils being long and hanging. I don't have many pastel colors in the garden. I'm more of a jewel tone person. Those are some of the few of the light colors that I have. Queen of the Prairie or Meadowsweet. It'll get a big pink cotton candy plume on it. And Joe Pye. But I won't bore you with what's coming. I just really wanted to show you what is blooming and the sounds. Mayaples. Another really aggressive plant. Lots of phlox down here, summer phlox. And this is the path to my bog veggie garden. But we're not going to go down there now. My fairy village here on the old tree stump. Yes, those are pallets. They border one side of my veggie garden, so the deer have a tendency to not want to walk on them, so they don't jump in. We're just walking back up around my hostas, where my beautiful Japanese maple is gone in here. I think it's coming from the root, but those fine-leafed weeping ones take so long to come back. Goat's beard's getting ready to bloom. It'll have a pretty white flower on it. Goat's beard. Across the path. This is more boggy down here. This is a loose strife. I think it's called firecracker. Pretty color. Foliage for now. A lot of jewelweed down here. Another very aggressive herb. And this is, where's the jewelweed? The jewelweed's right there. Very beneficial though for itch, skin itch, poison ivy, that kind of thing. Another Orthello, ligularia. Some sedges that like it in the shade more and moist. Dame's Rocket doesn't care where it goes. That's why it's aggressive. Lots of Japanese painted ferns and lungwort. Foam flower. And wild onion. Oh yeah. Too bad we don't have smell here. Yep. I can take those all off and then put them in my stir fry today. I think I'm going to have Chinese stir fry today with chicken. What is that? I forget. Jack in the Pulpit. Those scapes are potent. Ligularia, the rocket. Over on this side, I trained a trumpet vine to go up the a patio umbrella. And every year, some dies back, but some doesn't. And it will